How is everybody?
Great.
Two people are doing great. That's exciting. How's everybody else?
Great. Yeah.
Outstanding. Very good. I appreciate it. Yeah, just okay. It's a Tuesday. It's a little dreary outside. I get that. I really do. Hey, Jim. How are you this morning? Good. So I'm going to go over the calendar really quick, talk about a few events that are coming up in the future. Then our favorite lender, Sally, is going to come up. She's going to talk a little bit about lending in general. It'll be a great opportunity to ask some questions about financing, etc. And then we're going to jump into everybody's favorite topic, which is kind of timely as we get toward the end of the year, which are things that you should know and understand regarding taxes and how it relates to your real estate business. Karen already rolled her eyes as soon as I said that, which means it is super timely. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're also going to touch very briefly on Transaction Desk, Dot Loop, and how basically mastermind a little bit on how you can use those systems at a high level in your business, because I know some people do it a little bit differently. We'll share some best practices that I think will make it easier for everybody. Okay, so I want to highlight a couple things on the calendar. First off, how many of you went to the First Step to Bold yesterday? Very good. I know there were a couple other folks up there. It's not too late to sign up for the whole Bold if you'd like to. Just a reminder, there are a session that's starting either on Mondays or Tuesdays, so you get to pick depending upon your schedule. And the next session starts on either the 23rd or the 24th, depending upon which one you want to take part in. I just had an agent outside of our company reach out to me this morning. She texted me and she said, "Hey, I've been thinking a lot about Bold recently. I was at the last one. I need that discipline in my life again." She goes, "Can I still attend it even though I'm not with your company?" I said, "Absolutely, because I know you're going to be with our company soon." I'm just kidding. But I said, "Absolutely, you're more than welcome to attend again." So, I mean, it's such a valuable program. We've got people outside of our company knocking on the door saying, "Hey, can I still attend?" Yes, sir.
They filled Mondays was full. I think there was only 2 or 3 spots left on Tuesdays.
Good to
they
know.
had a waiting list.
Okay.
They might be opening a third one on Wednesday.
Are you kidding me? That's great news. And here's the deal. If I need to, I'll work a drug deal for you. All right. And so I'll leave it at that before I get in trouble because this is being recorded. But if you want to go and you desire a spot, I am so passionate about Bold. I've been through it almost 10 times myself. It's doubled my business 2 different times. If you want to go, we will find a way to get you there. Another super important event that's happening Friday the 13th. Is it a coincidence that Agent Financials is being taught on Friday the 13th in October? I think that's a sign. Agent Financials is being held in Roseville from 9 to 5. If you'd like to go to that, we'll get you there. I highly recommend you attend it. If you're at all looking to examine your business, look at the numbers, and get on stronger foot financially in terms of management of your business, which is also why we're going to be talking a little bit about that today as well. It's a great course. I've been through it before. I highly recommend it if you have the availability to go on Friday. The only other event I want to touch on is the 26th. The Business Planning Clinic is being held in Minneapolis from 9 to 4. Again, another phenomenal training opportunity. There's an awesome presenter coming from out of state that's going to touch on that. If you can attend, really set yourself up, get a plan in place, or at least start thinking about 2018. I know that sounds crazy to talk about 2018 already, but before you know it, we're going to find ourselves in November, and then what happens in November and what happens in December. Right, but I mean, like, what 2 big things happen, right? We've got Thanksgiving in November, and then immediately followed by Christmas, right? So let's be honest, people. As soon as November comes, you have 0 time. Right, because we start focusing on that stuff and family and preparing for those things. Hi, Leanne, how are you? So do yourself a favor, and while you have the time in October, come up with your plan for 2018. Lay that foundation and know where you want to be as you move into the first quarter of next year, because once November or December hits, it's going to be a miracle just to keep your head above water, right? No? Yes?
Hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. Absolutely. Okay, any questions about any of those events? Again, the information about them, the links we've emailed out to, we've sent out to you. They're in the Facebook group. You can go, you can sign up for any of those. If you don't know where the links are, if you need help signing up, just let us know. We'll help you do that. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Sally up. She's going to talk a little bit about things from a lending perspective. Welcome.
Please.
And just a reminder, a disclaimer, you're on camera being recorded, so just be careful about what you say.
Okay, so I need to be appropriate. Okay. I am Sally Sterner. There's a few new faces, else I think I know most of you. I just wanted to briefly just kind of touch base on a couple of things that have happened with AMIC. Have you guys heard of Fannie Mae Direct? where it just goes straight to Fannie Mae. There's no middleman basically. So AMIC is able to do that now. So it alleviates a lot of overlays. There's a few things that are really awesome about it. There's no maximum DTI. Typically, we have a maximum DTI of 50. As long as we have an automated underwriting approval, we can go above that as long as it runs. So that means people that otherwise wouldn't have been able to get a loan can get a loan. So it just kind of opens the scope of borrowers, you know, yep, we can get this done now. We can also do manual underwrites allowed, which is really great because a lot of times we can't do a manual underwrite, but if we're selling it straight to Fannie, we can. So that's also just makes our group bigger of what we can actually get financed. We do not need IRS transcripts unless they're self-employed. So you get to that point about February, March, where we're waiting on transcripts and it's pushing out our deal. We can't close in time because we haven't received those transcripts. This is great. We don't need them for this. So that's the rest of the year, it's not really that big of a deal. They come in quick, but during tax time, it's a big deal and it makes everybody's life terrible. So that's also great. Typically, we have a minimum credit score on conventional of 620. With Freddie Mac, as long as we're going direct, there isn't that. As long as it runs, we can ask for an exception. So, I mean, getting a conventional deal done under 620, I mean, that's pretty awesome too. So, so that's kind of what's new that we have that. Oh, and the pricing is better, way better, about 1/4 of a point less in interest rate. And you know, most people that have worked with me know that I can usually match or do better. I don't do an origination fee. If they're in a certain service, you know, if they're a police officer, a teacher, anything like that, I'm going to give them a free appraisal. So it just sweetens the deal even better. So I can beat the rate, if not match it, and this will definitely help me beat it. So. Any questions on that?
Do you have any other stuff to go over? Otherwise, I've got a bunch of questions.
No, it was very brief.
Very good.
Where, Bob, how are you? Everybody see me okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Come on in. So just a couple of quick questions for you. Yeah, you mentioned that you don't charge an origination fee, you'll match. Talk a little bit more about that and why that makes you competitive, or why our clients, our buyers, should really consider you, because that's a huge deal. I don't think we get that sometimes.
Whenever I see lending estimates from other banks, lenders, I always see an origin fee, even if it's half. Basically.
And explain to us in layman's terms, what is an origination fee?
Origination fee is what a lender is going to charge, basically as their cost to do the loan. Typically, it's 1%
of the loan
amount. So if you're looking at a $200,000 property, I mean, that's $2,000. Mine is zero, always zero. The one exception is when it is not zero, it's if I'm doing Minnesota housing. We can do the 0, or we can do 1. It's a lower rate for the client if it's 1, so it usually makes sense. If we're under like a DTI. In Minnesota housing, that's still an overlay that we have to abide by for these people, and they're coming in with a minimum of $1,000 or something like that. But they're also getting down payment assistance and stuff like that. And so there's an 1/8 of a point difference on the Minnesota housing. So if they pay the 1% origination fee, they're going to get that lower rate. And as long as I talk to them, are you planning on staying here 7 years or more? Oh yeah, this is like our forever home. Okay, well then you want to pay this money because it's going to pay for itself for sure. Or
follow-up question for you.
Yes.
That origination fee, can it be considered a closing cost that the seller could possibly pay if that's negotiated?
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
so if there
that's
is an
always
origination fee, so talk to us a little bit about that and closing costs in general. And kind of, if I said, hey Sally, I've got some clients, we're getting ready to throw together a purchase agreement on a property. I'm asking you, what should we do closing cost wise? What would that conversation sound like, and how would we team up as a partners to make sure that we get the right amount covered?
Right. So, I mean, we look at taxes, we look at everything. I get a lending estimate together, so we know exactly how much that's going to be. It always can change a little bit if it's a brand new house, because then the real taxes come in. But I can give you a pretty darn close amount, so we can do that. If there is excess, the first thing I look at is just buying down that rate. So, that happens quite a bit. I'm like, okay, we have an extra $1,200, and then I'll just throw in another $400 of my money, and let's just buy down that rate.
Can I pause really quick, because that's a really, I'm gonna come up and talk So that's okay.
Come on out.
So that's it's a very, very critical, what she just said is something that sets most lenders apart from others. Actually, I have to say it's a minority of lenders, because how many of you have had buyers, it's like the day before closing and you realize that that there's money left on the table, right? Let's say we negotiated $5,000 and seller paid closing costs. It's the day before closing, you're reviewing the closing statement and you see that they only used 4,000 of it. Well, what does that mean in a nutshell?
We lost out on 1,000.
The buyers lost out on $1,000 of free money. The sellers agreed, hey, we'll pay up to $5,000 toward closing costs. Well, we only used 4 of it. So there was $1,000 that got negotiated that the buyers just lost out on, right? So what Sally said that she does, that's a signal of a great lender, is well before closing, they're actually re-crunching the numbers and looking to see what's actually truly going to be utilized for closing costs. And if Sally sees $1,000 being left on the table, what is it that you do?
Yeah, I look to see if we can buy down the rate, and we can't always, because
Right.
sometimes the cost is too high, and that's unfortunate, but if we can, if it's gonna just cost me $400 to do a lender credit to get the rate down, I'm gonna do it.
She's going to look to maximize using all that money. But here's the deal. So I'll give you an example and you can tell me how you would handle this. So let's say it's $1,000, and let's say that that's not enough to buy down the rate, right? Okay, let's shoot, we can't buy down the rate. Let's say you've already kicked in some money, you can't kick any more to do it, right? Well, if she communicates to me as the agent, hey, Zach, FYI, I've maxed everything out. I've bought down the rate. We've paid for appraisals. I've paid it for everything. I've even prepaid some property taxes. We still have $1,000 left on the table. Well, now what can I do as an agent, because she has informed me well before closing?
Amend the purchase agreement.
Say that again?
Amend the purchase
And
agreement.
what would I do? What would that look like, Karen?
You would, I just went through this.
Oh, good.
You would ask the sellers to lower their purchase price, and you would.
By the difference.
Right.
Right. And you said it very nicely. You said you'd ask them, right? I just tell them, hey, this is what we're doing, right? To see how they respond, because most oftentimes, if you just say, hey, this is what we're doing, people are just like, okay, fine, let's sign off on it. Versus, hey, would you be so kind as to allow us to potentially change the price? But no, you've already opened the door to them coming back and being like, no, right? So if the lender communicates to us, saying we got $1,000 on the table, can't use it anymore, I'm going to do exactly what Karen did. I'm going to go to the listing agent and say, hey, FYI, we still have some funds remaining. We're just going to change the sale price, reduce it $1,000. Here's the amendment. We'll sign off on it. And here's the key part: it will not change or affect the net of your sellers. Right? If you explain that to them and they understand this is not going to have a negative impact on the net to your sellers, I've never had anybody not sign off on that amendment and change the sale price. But the big difference is how close you are to closing. Right? If you discover it yourself, or the lender doesn't make you aware of it, and we're just a day or two out from closing, well, changing that sale price becomes a little tricky. Why?
3 days.
Yeah. Why would that be a big deal for you if I tried to change the sale price a day prior?
It has to go back. Underwriting needs to review it.
So what would that mean for our close date?
Yeah, I'd have to get that out.
Yeah. At which point now the sellers are probably like, hey, no way, there's no way we're going to do that, right? So having a good lender that stays in constant communication with you and vice versa will help you take opportunities like that for your clients to really maximize all the money that they've already negotiated. The quickest way to get fired for me as one of the lenders that we utilize is to leave money on the table for one of my buyers. It happened with my brother-in-law, of all people. We don't work with that lender anymore, right? He was fired. It's like, are you kidding me? Crunch the numbers ahead of time. And a little bit of shame on us too, because now what do you think we start doing at least 2 weeks prior to closing? We start knocking on Sally's door. Hey, we got any money left over? We need to know ASAP so that if we're going to change the price, we have the time to do it so that it doesn't affect close date. So having a lender that understands that process and that it's diligent about it is super helpful. I like how Sally operates. Number one, she takes the initiative to maximize those funds. Then if she doesn't, if there's still money on the table, she'll communicate it to you with enough time for you to do a change that will hopefully have a positive impact for your buyers. So if you're doing that, you're doing real estate at a very, very high level, right? That's ultimate customer service to your clients. So just keep that in the back of your mind. All right, I'll let you keep going. Sorry.
Well, I was just answering questions at this point.
Good. What's the biggest? Okay, so when you say Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and the reason I'm asking these questions is these are a lot of times questions that your buyers will ask you. And so being able to speak to them is helpful. And I often tell them, hey, I know enough to be dangerous. I can explain to you, things in general terms, but I'm always going to redirect them back to the lender when it comes to specifics, because I don't want to be on the hook for that. I would much rather have Sally be on the hook for that, right? So when you talk about Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, who are those real people? Like, what is that?
That's real. So their agency, those are the people that are gonna back a conventional loan.
So
Your
it's,
government
it's
loans.
they insure loans, right?
Correct.
Government insured. Okay, so that's why they have. That's why they're impactful to our financing, right?
Absolutely.
So when you say FHA and you say conventional, what are some of the main differences that as an agent I should understand between those two different types of financing?
Well, I mean, so much guidelines,
Just bullet points,
requirements.
just bullet points.
FHA, you know, you're going to be under stricter guidelines because it's FHA. The government has its hands in it. Appraisals are going to be more strict. They're gonna, an FHA, you're always gonna have mortgage insurance now, regardless.
For the life of the loan.
For the life of the loan, unless you have, no, there's actually a situation where you can get rid of the mortgage insurance. If you have 10% down going into an FHA loan, then you only have like, I think it's 7 years of mortgage insurance.
So is it when you hit the 20% threshold or just 7 years regardless of what your equity position is?
20%.
Okay, so yeah, that's something new. I didn't know.
So FHA, but I think I've had one FHA loan that actually had that much going into it.
Right, because why would you
Except
go conventional?
refinance is the same way. As if they have that built-in equity and you refinance an FHA, then you will get rid of that mortgage insurance.
So if you do a 10% or more down with FHA, you do have the ability to then
get rid of
EMI later down the road.
Yeah, which is great because their rates are always a lot less.
Why would you do FHA if you have 10% down and not go for
Credit score.
Exactly. But now the conventional credit scores have gone down so much, you know, being at 620.
That's
Or
pretty
even below if you can get an exception going straight to Fannie. So another reason would be if your credit score is lower, the mortgage insurance is going to be a lot less. If you get into those, I need things 660 or below mortgage insurance and a conventional loan, it is shocking. I priced one. It was like $400 a month.
interest rate.
That's for mortgage insurance. Like, you get no better. So at that point, it's like, you really should consider doing an FHA because it's going to save you $300 or something like that. And then work on your credit, get it up, and then refinance, you know, you're in a better position.
Sally, what's the minimum down payment for a conventional loan?
3%.
So tell me more about that, because what do a lot of your buyers think the minimum is? A lot of them think it's 20.
They do.
If they're a little extra on the up and up, they think it might be 5. But there's a little as 3% down, which is, oh, by the way, 0.5% less than FHA. So tell us a little bit about that.
So we can do straight, just 3% down. There's no requirements at all. Your mortgage insurance is going to be higher. You know, it's riskier. There's less down. But then there's also the 3% Home Ready and Home Possibles. Now, those do have some income limitations. They might require home buyer education, different stuff like that. But with that comes a reduction in mortgage insurance. So if a borrower can qualify for that, it's always the best way to go. If you can do that, if you do a Home Possible.
And your appraisal is going to be less stringent.
Yeah, because
Right?
it's conventional. It's
And
conventional.
by the way, if it's a townhome that has an association that does not accept FHA, and your people are strapped for cash, well, they might still potentially be able to do a 3% down conventional and meet that threshold with the association versus doing the 3.5% FHA.
In reality, you can do conventional with $1,000 because you can use Minnesota Housing. If your borrower qualifies, minimum contribution is $1,000. It's a 3% down. The mortgage insurance is cut in half. That's the absolute best way to go if they can qualify for Minnesota Housing. Income limits in Rochester aren't bad. It's like $90,000. You know, I mean, a lot of people are within that, you know, depending on how much they make, and they might have to do a monthly payment loan on that down payment. But if they qualify, I think it's under $62,000. If they make less than that, then it's deferred, interest-free for 30 years. And they don't pay it until the first mortgage is satisfied. So you can't really beat that. You know, I do a lot of Minnesota Housing because if it wasn't for that, they wouldn't be able to get into a home.
Yeah, which is why I think sometimes we view lenders and maybe more specifically appraisers and underwriters as a necessary evil, right? When in fact they are enablers, right? Because how many? I would wager to bet that, you know, this group in this room right now have probably come into communications with several prospects or several people that would like to buy or think they would like to buy, and they probably can. You just didn't know or ask the right questions or weren't able to explain to them, hey, no, you actually very well could qualify to purchase a home. got so many options and programs out there. What might be most beneficial for you is to meet with a lender like Sally, who can just take a quick look at your situation and then give you some recommendations, right? And oh, by the way, maybe it means you're not able to do so next month, but after you meet with her, like, do you ever have people you meet with and then within 3 to 4 months, they're in a position to buy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have people that come back a year and a half later, Adam, but, you know, keep them going and get them where they need to be.
Right.
I have a lot of them like that, where it's like, this is gonna be a really tough ride if we try to do it now. Nobody's gonna be happy with it. Take 6 months.
When it comes back to the education piece, and I think a lot of the value that we as agents and lenders bring to the table is just educating people about their options and explaining it to them. So if you know, if Sally does a good job of explaining to you enough to be dangerous to where you can have that conversation with somebody and say, hey, I think you do have some options there. I think there is some potential. You should really talk to a lender to see what options you have. That oftentimes will lead to you, picking up a client that's going to convert to business at some point in the future. Would you agree, Sally? Is it a general statement to say that we are seeing a lot of, I don't want to use the word deregulation, but we're seeing a lot of restrictions eased up on?
Yeah.
So tell me, what's a fundamental, big generic difference we're seeing in lending right now in 2017 heading into 2018 versus what we saw in like 13 and 14, maybe even 15, for example?
Overlays, I mean, your debt to income, I mean, it's all starting to just get a little bit easier.
We're going backward.
We're going backward,
Yeah.
but it's still full documentation. I mean, not that we don't have loans out there that aren't full documentation, but those are broker loans. They're held in house. You're gonna be paying a lot more interest on these kind of things. And typically, those are gonna be for your investors. They already. And there's still requirements. They have to own a primary house. They have to be at a decent credit score. We may not have to look at their financials and just go on, how much money they're netting off of their investments or stuff like that. So it's still, they still have safeguards. This is still a full documentation loan. We're still verifying their employment. I remember back, that 2007, 2008, I remember my mom refinanced her home, and they just made up an income and a business for her to get her to qualify. Oh my God. That happened all the time. That happened all the time. And that's what the big problem was, is because people really couldn't afford this stuff. It was not full documentation. They would just make up, should we just say that you make $6,000 a month? Does that sound good? Yeah, that sounds great. In reality, $1,200 a month, there's a big difference. So that stuff is still all verified, and we're still verifying tax returns. We're still verifying employment. They still 3 days before closing, their employer is getting a phone call again. Do they still work here? So yes, it is deregulating. It's getting easier. We still have the full documentation, so it keeps that safeguard, so we don't have another.
So a little bit of a summary is, even before 2007, but like leading up to 2007, 2008, everybody pretty much knows it was kind of fast and loose in the lending world, right? In real estate too in general, which led to a lot of the issues that we had. So when that was discovered, we had the housing crisis. There was an overcorrection, and a lot of regulations were placed on lenders and requirements that they had to meet. That even trickled into title as well, right? So then when we had the period from 2009 to 2013, for some people it was almost like an insurmountable mountain to be able to get qualified for a mortgage, right? Well, what's happened, since the market started to recover, what has been happening with our economy, what's been happening with our housing market? What does the government now want?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wants you in a home, right? And if our restrictions were super high, and people that would normally probably be able to qualify for a mortgage weren't able to get them, what have we started seeing now as a result of that to encourage more homeowners?
Renters.
What's that?
Encouraging more renters.
Yeah, this was encouraging renters, but now we're seeing that little bit of that deregulation or some of these more programs and exceptions, which is really trying to get more toward like a hybrid scenario. From like 2013 on, we've kind of started to see that deregulation. So they're saying, hey, we know we can't get this crazy fast and loose with money, but we also need to be reasonable so that people can actually afford homes and be able to qualify for mortgages. So let's deregulate a little bit. Let's come up with some programs. Let's keep interest rates low so that people can actually, your average person can actually qualify for a mortgage, right? That's good for all of us. People can buy, homes are selling, the economy is moving forward, right? So that's kind of what we're seeing right now, and we're going to continue to see more and more deregulation. But let's talk about something else at a little bit of a higher level so that you have a great understanding of the economy when you're having conversations with buyers. It relates back to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Does anybody know what's going on with those two entities right now? Are there any issues with those
Never
entities?
seen any tweets lately.
There's a storm coming, Jim. You look like you maybe had something, Trudy.
Well, isn't one of them
Both of them.
going away?
Well, so, okay, that's what I'm looking for. There's a conversation right now, a huge conversation politically. Do we keep Fannie and Freddie Mac? Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Do we keep them? Do we allow the government to, who owns Fannie and Freddie right now? The United States government has a majority ownership of both of those entities. When did that happen? When the market tanked, those were going down. Housing crisis averted when the government steps in and took those companies into what they call conservatorship. We now own you, we own your stock. The profits from your companies, from your entities now go to the United States Treasury, right? Well now, guess what happened since the housing market recovered? Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are very, very profitable. Guess who else owns Fannie and Freddie? Just normal shareholders. They've got stock in both those companies and they're saying, hey, government, get the heck out of there. The profits are being diverted to you and they should be getting diverted to the shareholders. We have a big issue, which is leading to a political discussion of, hey, do we keep these things in conservatorship or not? Or do we just get, we've got people in Congress calling for Fannie and Freddie to be dissolved completely, right? Which means, guess what? No more government-backed financing, FHA, VA. What kind of implications does that have for us as realtors and for our clients, right? So part of what you're seeing, as we see conventional financing get deregulated, we see the credit score threshold drop, we see the percentage down payment threshold drop. You know, these are steps that they're moving toward to say, hey, if FHA and VA go away or they're no longer backed by the government, conventional is going to have to be a go-to. And most people can't hit that 5 or 20% threshold. Not most people, some people can, right? So we got to find a way to make conventional more attractive to people. Sally, I would wager to bet that a majority of the loans you're doing right now is conventional financing. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely,
I would guess that a few years ago it was probably majority FHA.
absolutely.
So we're making steps toward conventional. I love conventional financing for several reasons. Interest rates are usually better. You get stronger buyers, which means depending upon what type of conventional financing you utilize, your appraisal is usually less stringent, right? So we're seeing a lot more people move toward it because they can afford to. And also the government, you know, selfishly might have some reasons for conventional being more attractive than FHA as well. So not to go off on a long tangent, but there's, you know, understanding what's going on economically with all the various entities and how that trickles down. If you're doing a home buying seminar or you're having conversations about financing with people and they're like, that dude seems to know what he's talking about, I would like to work with him. It's very, very helpful, right? What does Gary Keller say you should be? The local what of choice? Local economist, the local expert of choice, the same thing, right? So knowing those things and what's going on is very, very helpful, and it allows you to have a good insight to the financing side of things and what's going on there. Because I'll be honest with you, and raise your hand if you've experienced this as well. Raise your hand if you've ever dealt with a lender who you can tell is not as knowledgeable as Sally, right? Not a good experience. When you're having to explain to them some things that they should already know or have been explained to your buyer, that's a no-go, right? That's why you want to seek out professionals like this. And that's why you also need to be knowledgeable enough to know when someone's blowing smoke. I shouldn't point at you when I said that. When somebody's blowing smoke. Sorry, Jim. You know, if you've got a lender from, and I'm just going to pick a company, I'm not saying anything about this company in particular, Quicken Loans, and you can tell they're blowing smoke, or they're saying, hey, wait a minute, we need to do a termite inspection. Like, did you check to see where this PA is? Have you guys ever had a lender come back to you and say, yeah, it's like, yeah, termite inspection. We live in the great state of Minnesota. We're lucky to be alive in the wintertime, let alone termites, right? So, you know, just keep that in mind, know enough to be dangerous, know when you can throw a red flag, you know, for your clients, and partner with people that really know what they're doing and understand what's going on from a financial standpoint as well.
And Quicken, for instance, like those type of ones, I mean, they literally bombard people with these letters. I mean, you brought one to me where it's like 3% interest rate. That's not real. That's not real.
Well, that might be the advertised interest rate, but when you're
That's
working with
not
clients,
real.
what are they really paying attention to? What should you be coaching them to know? What?
Well, you just want to have all the numbers, all the fees.
What's that called?
all the
Through
information.
APR.
Yeah.
We're looking for APR. You need to let your buyers know. In the consultation I have with them from day one, I say, that's great. You can look at what interest rates are being advertised, et cetera, but you always need to ask, what's the APR? Because that's the true cost. And my lender will tell you from day one what the APR is. Not
And an
gonna
official lending estimate,
exactly.
official, because they can give you anything they want, but if it's not, I mean, they have to, when they officially disclose the lending estimate, they are held to those standards. They can't add fees. They can't add an origination after they've disclosed a zero. That's, that's new regulation that protects buyers. You can't just, oh, well, we're just gonna change it now.
Right. But a lot of that consumer protection came from what happened here, right? So the good news is, I think we're getting to a happy medium where we're lending to more good qualified people, and the countermeasures are protecting against predatory lenders, right? So that Sally can't come take advantage of me, poor homeowner. Not that she ever would, of course. But that's why that exists. That's why it's now a pain that if you're going to make changes to closing documents just a day before closing, that almost automatically pushes it out a couple days, because they don't want lenders or title companies to be, or real estate, professionals to come in the day before closing and say, oh, by the way, here's this huge, massive fee you need to pay in order to close. Because at that point, your buyer's kind of what? They're SOL a little bit. It's like, hey, I've got a moving truck packed. I need to close on this sucker. So if you're telling me I have to pay an extra $1,000, I guess I'm having to pay an extra
And some of
$1,000.
those fees, they just can't change once it's been disclosed. It's not even 3 days. Some of them just can't. An origination fee, for instance. If it's not, if it's disclosed as zero, you cannot add it.
And if you're
At any
seeing,
point.
it's
It's done.
as a real estate professional, if you're kind of seeing their estimates and you see an origination that's greater than 1%, what should you maybe tell your clients?
Be sell.
See Sally,
Run.
shop around. I tell them in my first consultation, I say, shop around. Here's a couple of great lenders I know right now, and let them know that you're shopping around, right? Carrie, you're gonna say something, right?
I was gonna say, the other thing Sally's awesome at is if you have people who are looking to build up their credit, she's got the tips from the credit reporting standpoint that I remember talking to you going, I had no idea.
Right.
So then she's like a guru with that stuff.
Well, we also have a resource in which I can basically take a credit report, send it out. It's amicus cost, there's no cost to the borrower. And I say, okay, this is the target score we're looking at. We need to get this to a 660. What can we do in 30 days? And they will send back, and they do those things. It's there. We do a rapid rescore. So sometimes, it's often, I think, that I do that with clients because let's say they want to do Minnesota housing and they're at a 659. I've had that, 659. Minnesota housing requires 660. We need 1 point. We need to get, there's no question. You can pay down that Maurice's bill by $50 and you're going to get that point. But to be sure, let's just send it in so that way we know, get her done, and we're there. All is good. So.
And that's how you really, when you can provide that kind of value to clients, that's how you get for life. Like, hey man, we wouldn't be in a home today if it wasn't for our agent putting us in touch with a lender who counseled us through this, got us a successful plan in place that allowed us to ultimately own this home. So my guess is there are quite a few people that during this time frame looked into buying a home and were told, sorry, you don't meet the requirements because they were so stringent. So let me ask you this: what is the only thing they remember about that? What's the only thing they remember? No. Right. All they remember is that they were told no, that it seemed impossible to get a mortgage. So guess what? If you reach out to those people and have them explore that process now under today's regulations, chances are they qualify. But they probably don't know that because they were told no and they've just never thought to ask again, right? Because let me ask you this: if you are going through the home loan process, and you're trying to request a mortgage and you're told no, how does that make you feel as just a person? Deflated. It's kind of embarrassing. You're deflated. You're like, oh my God. So do you think you're going to raise your hand and go through that process again with a smile on your face? No. Probably not, unless you won the lottery, right? So sometimes you got to reach back out to those people and say, hey, I know that we were looking, at homes together back in 2012, and that financing was an issue. I'm just calling to let you know we've seen some pretty substantial changes recently to financing. Chances are you might actually qualify under a lot of the options that are available now. Would love to have Sally reach out to you, have a conversation just to review your options. It's a great time to buy. I think that 2017 or 2018 might be the year for you if you're open to it.
And I'm just gonna add, there are so few people that come to me that I can't get it done. I mean, there really are, just very, very few. It's like, okay, I mean, some people, okay, maybe we need 2 months or something like that, but for the most part, I think people, they have it, and people have a 620 credit score or better. So, and there's even different ways too. I know I run into some people that may have defaulted on their student loans. That's usually a big thing. You know, you can't get a mortgage unless those are corrected. Well, you can actually reach out, and I found this with dealing with a client, you can actually reach out to Federal Servicing, and they'll get you on a payment plan for 6 months, and they will remove it from your credit and make it acceptable again. So you might have defaulted on $40,000, and you thought, oh, I have to get paid off before I can buy a house. Oh, you just have to make payments sometimes, 6 months with them. So,
And they might even consolidate some too, right? Save some money on a monthly
yeah,
payment.
you can absolutely do that. They will require you to do the 6 months because it's a federal act. They have their process, and then you could go ahead and consolidate.
I'm telling you right now, one of the biggest hinderers or objections I get, especially with first-time home buyers, has to deal with this: student loan debt. Student loan debt. What's been going on with student loan debt over the years?
Skyrocketed.
It's like, have you ever seen that statue of the man who's got the world on his shoulders and is holding it like this? That's the latest generation of college students. And instead of the world, it's student loan debt. It's just weighing them down. They think about it every day. They can't sleep because they're thinking about it at night because they feel like they can't get out from under it, right?
It's like a house.
It is.
The average debt is $125,000.
Right. So what have you heard in terms of monthly payments for some of these kids? What have you heard? What's been it? Anybody just throw out some figures.
800 to 1,000.
I'd say that's a pretty accurate representation.
Mhm.
$800 to $1,000 a month, not taking into account rent or what would be your mortgage, right? Not taking into account, you know, at some point, what's the magic age in this day and age, and where you're no longer under your parents' health insurance? 26. So guess what? 800 to $1,000 a month, and oh, by the way, when you turn 26, you now might also have to tack on how much in terms of monthly payments for healthcare.
$800.
$800 potentially. You know, I'd say that's probably an accurate average, right? So if I'm 26 and you know my employer doesn't provide health insurance for me, and I've got $1,000 I'm paying every month in student loan debt, plus I've got an additional $800 in health insurance. Oh, by the way, do you think most 26-year-olds are forgoing to pay that? Yeah, they're just going to get one,
Yeah.
right? Maybe depends upon you know what kind of legislation's out there, and what tax repercussions there are. But they're already at close to $2,000 a month, paying off student loan debt and providing health care, not taking into account living expenses, right? That's a huge hurdle for us right now. So understanding student loan debt and what they can do to overcome it, how they can maybe reconsolidate it here or there, is absolutely critical. Or being super dangerous and knowledgeable about what programs are out there that will forgive certain portions of student loan debt, what employment opportunities help tackle some of that stuff. So this is going to be something that in the foreseeable future continues to be something we have to work with. We can't work around it. We got to work with it, figure out how can we still help these people afford homes. Because one of the number one vehicles to building wealth is what?
Owning a home.
Real estate. It's owning a home. Like I still remember this story. We had some clients of ours, between the two of them, they probably owed like 50 grand in college debt, but they had bought in like 2011 or 2012. So they sold in 15 or 16. So what had their home done over those few years? Appreciated like crazy. We're talking unreal appreciation, right? They're able to sell their home, eliminate completely all of their college debt, still put a substantial down payment on their next property, and oh, by the way, they're paying less every month now in their mortgage. Their mortgage is less per month, and they have no more college loan payments every month. What just happened to their monthly budget? What just happened to their family? That's unreal. That's unreal. I guarantee you can hold seminars on that and pack the room on a monthly, if not weekly basis, and pick up clients left and right, explain to them, hey, what if I could show you a way to eliminate or take a huge substantial chunk out of your student loan debt and increase your monthly budget by a substantial amount. Is that something that would be of interest to you? Because I've helped people do it before, and as a matter of fact, if you come to a seminar we're gonna have, I'll have my client tell you exactly how we did it for them. If we can find a way to make it work for you too, we'd be happy to do that. That's coming from contribution. That's providing unreal value, right? I'm gonna go hold one of those seminars right now, right? So think about that and how we can impact people's lives when it comes to stuff like that. So last but not least, we talked about lending and financing a lot from first-time home buyers or just home buyers perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
What should we know if we want to help investors buy? What sort of financing implications or things we can want to help investors?
So many options now. So many.
Which is a good thing because it hasn't always been the case.
Right. Yeah, the guidelines have really kind of came down on those investors too. You know, we have a broker option, which is really great. It's a lower credit score. All you have to do is own a primary property, basically. You don't even have to have the income to qualify. You just have to have 10% above PITI at the end of the day. That's it. That's the requirement. And, you know, as long as the appraisal can show that, I mean, most of them are going to show a 10% gain on that. And boom, you get it done. So especially those new investors that are maybe younger, that just don't have the money, the 20-25% required to get started, they can go this route.
So tell me about that. Typically, you have to have at least 20 or 25% to put down on your investment property, right?
Yep.
So are you saying there are options to maybe lower that threshold?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that's by what, showing that the property appraises for more than,
Well, this is an in-house loan.
okay,
So it's a broker-backed loan, so they might do 15%, or depending on the way the appraisal comes in. So there's, you know, I mean, I don't recommend this unless it's everything else is off the table, because it is higher interest.
Mhm.
So, you know, and I do a lot of investor loans where people are just starting, so they want to they've lived in their primary property for 2 years. That's pretty much the only requirement. They have to have lived there for 2 years. They can find renters, get a signed lease and signed deposit, and then they can use 75% of their rent towards their income for qualifying. So let's say they don't have that much, you know, they have a lot of debt and stuff like that. It kind of just negates that house payment. I mean, as long as what they're getting for rent matches, you know, 75%. But that's how people just getting started are starting to build on them. I have one client, he's on 4, and he's like 26. So he keeps doing it because he can keep qualifying because he has renters, and so we can keep using it. And
so every time he buys a
are-
property, if it has a positive cash flow, he's netting income monthly, and oh, by the way, he gets to count 75% of that net income as actual true income that he can use to keep bumping up his qualification for more properties, right? So how much down do you think on average this guy's having to put down on properties to buy it?
20%.
Yeah, so in dollar amounts, what do you think that is roughly?
Typically, an investment is about 140, 150.
So he's putting about what down?
Make me do math up here. I think about 30,
Roughly?
30-ish. A
So,
little bit more usually, because the investors are usually paying their own closing costs. They're usually not.
right, but this guy says he owns what, 4 properties right now? So what's 4 times 30,000?
120.
And what do you think the average sale price is of the properties that he's been buying?
About 150.
About 150?
140 maybe.
Let's use 150. What's 150 times 4?
600.
So you mean to tell me this 26-year-old has secured $600,000 worth of real estate. So he owns $600,000 worth of property. And all he's had to do is put about 120 on the table. And oh, by the way, so he owns $600,000 worth of real estate. And that, when did he start doing this? When did he buy his first property? When did that?
3 years ago.
So that was in 2000 what?
2014. I'm not good with math.
2014. It's okay. You're only a lender. I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing you. So he's putting up 120,000. He's secured 600,000 in real estate, which we know is going to continue to what? If he bought that, some of those in 14, they've already appreciated.
Oh,
right?
ton.
They probably already appreciated to cover pretty close to his $30,000 investment, right? So 120, I've got 600,000 in real estate. It's continuing to appreciate. And oh, by the way, what do you think a monthly payment is on some of the properties that he's purchased?
$950.
$950, unreal. What do you think he's charging in rent?
Oh, well, I guess the one big house, I think his payment was $1150 and he gets $2,400.
Okay, so let's just say, I'm gonna be conservative and let's say that he's getting $1,200 in rent, right? So let's just say he's netting $200 a month on it, right? So 200 times 4 is what?
800.
800 times 12 is what? 800 times 12, more than 800. Thank you.
800.
Say again. Is it 9,600?
What do you know?
So he's roughly he's cash flowing roughly 10 grand a year.
No.
I did
Oh,
200
yeah.
times 4 properties, 800 a month times 12. Thank you. So he's gonna cash flow roughly 10 grand a year, while he's got somebody else paying off his $600,000 in real estate that's also appreciating over time. And oh, by the way, because he owns these properties, what can you do from a tax standpoint? He can take deductions. And oh, by the way, this is income that he can also utilize to continue to qualify to purchase more properties potentially, right? And oh, by the way, as interest rates and prices go up, what's becoming, like your investors right now, Melissa, back me up on this if this is an accurate statement, they are coming out in hundreds and they are salivating for properties right now.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for backing me up on that. So because they understand that as prices go up and interest rates goes up, what's going to happen to this margin right here? Well, it's going to continue to shrink. This margin is going to shrink. Their ability to cash flow is going to be more difficult unless they put more cash down up front, right? Which the whole reason we do this is to put as little down as possible, right? So now is the time. I always tell investors, hey, guess what? Third quarter, fourth quarter, sometimes you can find a steal. Sometimes you can find a steal. So those are the people that we should be talking to, marketing to right now, our investors, right? I mean, more power to that guy for doing what he's doing. Anyway, I won't go down that road anymore. But I think we've covered a lot of things that you can continue to talk with people about to contribute to them, help your business. We understand, the value that a good expert lender brings to the table as well. And so this turned into a little bit longer of a discussion than I anticipated, but hopefully you found it useful. Was it useful for you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What else from you before I move on to some stuff?
And if any of you have any questions, I mean, you can be using another lender, that's okay, but if you have a question that you want to know, just call me, I'm happy to answer it.
And what'd you bring today?
I brought tacos. It's Tuesday. Taco Tuesday.
So let's do a round of applause for Sally. Thank you very much. Appreciate your insight. I mean, here's the deal. If you like, I call lenders all the time. If I had to, I would just call Sally and say, hey, I got a lender question for you. Let me know what's going on, or what do you recommend, or have you ever heard of this before? Let them be your common sense checker. Let them give you some ideas or some thoughts, right? That's going to help you with your transactions and with your clients. So we talked a little bit about a lot of good scenarios today, but what I want to talk about as we get closer to the end of the year a little bit, and don't hate me for this, is taxes. Right? I want to talk to you about taxes. I want to talk to you about how it relates to how we as independent contractors, self-employed people, plan for taxes and how we tackle that beast, right? But I'll caveat everything I say, much like when we work with our clients, that I'm not a tax expert. I'm not an accountant. I don't have the patience for that, I don't think. And what I can share with you are things that I've learned from accountants, things that I do personally, best practices that I've heard, but I don't profess to know it all. This is just my opinion, what has worked for me. We probably have varying opinions in the room, right? But it's absolutely critical that, as we hit the end of the year, you're making sure that you're going to be financially strong and able to pay those taxes. And that as you move into 18, you're planning to do so as well, because what's one of the number one things that knocks agents out of the industry? Say again? Unpaid taxes. Unpaid taxes. Why? Why does that happen to us?
We don't plan it.
Right? We plan to close and we plan to spend. Right?
Every transaction, you need to pull money out for taxes.
Right, because when you get that commission check, Carrie, what's different from when you get a commission check versus somebody who's a W-2 employee getting a paycheck every 2 weeks from an employer?
You gotta pull it out. versus it gets automatically.
Right.
for you.
Exactly. So let's talk about that. When you're a W-2 employee and you get that check every 2 weeks, some stuff's automatically coming out of that pay, right? What's coming out of there?
Social Security, income tax, state, federal.
And there's like at least half a dozen various taxes that come out of that money. So what's happened is their employer, because the government makes them, has already started paying their, like every time they get paid, their employer is paying a portion of the taxes that they would be responsible for, right? Well, when Keller Williams cuts you your commission check, especially if you're at 100%, what comes out of it? Zero. Nothing, which is good news and bad news, right? Because if we're not taking anything out of the commission check from a taxes standpoint, what does that mean that Uncle Sam is going to expect at some point? Don't expect those payments, right? Say again?
Money.
Yeah,
Want their money.
absolutely. So when you're self-employed, because your taxes aren't being collected on the regular for you, what does the government or the IRS say they like to receive every quarter? In theory.
An estimate of what you're gonna make.
Right. If you're a self-employed person, in theory, the government says they want quarterly tax payments. Does everybody agree with that statement?
Yes.
Notice I caveated that with in theory. And the other thing I'll explain to you, and this is from personal experience, is if a deadline passes or you miss a quarterly payment or something, don't freak out. It's not that, don't do what I'm sometimes tempted to do, which is like, oh, I'm just gonna keep ignoring that, right? Don't do that because it's only gonna get worse over time, right? Just have an open conversation, talk to your accountant. Hey, you know what? I think I missed that deadline. Still want to get this in order. I know there's probably going to be a small penalty because the penalty it's not crazy, right? Unless you've gone a long, long time or you've like done some tax evasion, then we got problems, right? If you miss a quarterly deadline, it's not terrible. I think at the most once I got fined like $100. Okay, fine. You know what to do. Okay, so. They say in theory we should be paying quarterly tax payments, right? So 4 times out of the year, or really 3 times because then you make your last payment toward the end, you should be paying your quarterly taxes, right? So let me ask you this. When you get your commission check, what percentage do you think of your commission check is roughly, on average, going to taxes?
35%.
Say again?
35%.
Any other figures?
15 to 25.
Okay, any other figures? Okay, so I'm going to, and this is just based on my experience, I'm going to tell you 30 to 35%. And here's why I tell you that, and I've discovered this. 30% will usually keep you pretty well covered until you hit a certain threshold, right? Did I hear, someone's experienced that, where all of a sudden, you know, the more successful you are, the more they're going to collect from you. It just is what it is, right? So 30% is a good place to start, but once you get to a certain threshold, that 35% starts to look good, right? It's going to be a little bit more beneficial. I heard somebody else say like 15 to 20. Who said that?
I did, because that's what our tax guy was talking about. He said,
Yeah, so let's talk about your tax guy and why he's probably telling you that. Because I will submit to you, one of the things that I learned early on was I'm forming a business entity. All my checking and savings accounts are going to be business checkings and savings. And every deal I do, I'm super religious about that. 30% goes straight into the savings account, and that's my tax account, right? I've had to bump it to 35, okay? And I've been religious about that from day one. But here, so the way I've done it, if just setting 30% aside from every check is uber conservative, because what am I not taking into account when I do that? Not taking into account my expenses. So that's probably why he's quoting you 15 to 20%, because by the time you factor in your business expenses, if you're setting 30 to 35% aside, it might get, you know, more accurate percentage might be about 15 to 20, right? Yeah. But I'm uber conservative with it because I would rather have a pleasant surprise on tax day than an unpleasant one, right? It's all about how you personally decide to manage your income and your finances, okay? I think for the last 2 or 3 years in a row, we've overpaid. So every year at the end of the year, I've actually taken and I've just pushed that money into the next tax. I probably haven't had to pay a check come tax season for the last few years because I keep just pushing my overpayments into the next year. At some point, I got to do something about that, right? But it's so awesome to know at the end of the year when I have my tax event, like, hey, you actually have overpaid, so you've already started on next year, right? versus what do a lot of agents do? They're working behind, right? They figure out, this is what happens. They figure out, hey, you're going to owe $15,000 to the IRS. I'm like, oh crap, where am I going to find that money? Right? Versus what would the conversation sound like with your accountant who say, actually, you've got 10 grand you've already paid in that you can already start applying toward 2018. Number one, you're kind of like, shoot. Man's like, I could buy so many shoes with that extra. But it's also a sigh of relief. Like, whew, okay, so everything I've got in my bank account, you're telling me is profit. That's amazing. So I'm gonna take a massive distribution at the end of this year, right? And I've already worked ahead on my next year. So financially, I'm good to go, right? So a couple of takeaways. If you don't have a business entity, I highly recommend you create one. You can do that with the state Commerce Department of Commerce. Excuse me, I'm sorry, the Secretary of State. If you go to the Secretary of State for Minnesota's website, you can create one fairly easily. Or if you hire an accountant or something, they can help you with that as well. Create an LLC or whatever you want to create, and then you can file as an S Corp or however you want to file your taxes, etc. Right? But the other reason why we coach and suggest that you have a business entity and business accounts is what? What does it kind of protect you from in theory?
Awesome.
Liability. Liability. We want to show a clear distinction between our personal finances, our personal income, our personal money, and our business, right? My LLC is called Lucky Duck Realty LLC, okay? Every commission check that Keller Williams cuts when I do a closing goes to Lucky Duck Realty. It does not go to Zach Duckworth. It goes to Lucky Duck Realty LLC, goes into that entity's business account. 30% of it goes into that entity's savings account. And then when I choose to, Lucky Duck Realty LLC pays Zach Duckworth. It's part of Duckworth. Let's be real here. Just kidding. It pays us, right? What we earn as an employee of that entity, right? So, because if push came to shove and something went crazy and someone decided to sue me, they can sue my entity, my business, and potentially tap into those assets. But there's what they call a barrier or a degree of separation from my business finances and my personal finances. So have you ever heard someone talk about breaching the corporate barrier, right? What we are puncturing the corporate veil, right? What we want to say is, here's the deal. If I'm acting in the capacity of Lucky Duck Realty, this business entity, you can go to town and try to sue that entity all day long, but you can't come after me personally because there's a barrier between the two, right? That being said, if I mix the funds of both, if I've got business funds mixed with personal funds, I'm writing checks for business expenses for my personal accounts. Well, guess what? All of a sudden they can say, no, there's no barrier at all between these finances. For all we know, what's involved in your personal stuff is part of what's involved in your business stuff. So if we're coming after you from a liability standpoint, we're coming after everything, right? So having that legal entity managing your funds in this way helps you from a degree of liability if that were ever to happen. You know, worst case scenario. It's probably not going to happen to anybody in this room, but it's something to think about. So the takeaway is this, you know, for many years, every once in a while, I get towards the end, I always tell myself, in 2018, I want to do it this way. In 2018, I'm going to structure it this way. In 2018, I'm going to create another entity that's going to be, and then guess what happens? January comes, I started in 2018, I've kind of lost my opportunity to start it the way that I wanted to from a tax standpoint. So give yourself between October, November, December to decide how do you want to structure taxes for 2018? What do you want it to look like? Do you want to be diligent about setting aside the amount of money from every commission check that you're going to need? Take the time to come up with a monthly budget and implement it and have an understanding of what it is now so that come January 1st, you're ready to implement it on day one, right? You don't miss the opportunity to do it at that point. Create the business entities that you're going to need. Create the business accounts that they're going to need. Order your business checks. Get business cards, the business, checking debit cards. And then start setting aside portions from your checks and start it right and set it up now so that when 2018 comes, it's already in place. You're not scrambling to do it at that point. Because I've had a couple times. I've got a few different entities, and I always tell myself, I'm going to start this one January of this year. It goes by, and I've got crap. Looks like I'm going to have to do it next year, right? And I miss out on that opportunity. So, any questions or thoughts on that? Anybody that operates somewhat similarly to that, care to chime in and offer any insights or experiences?
I've had one for a very long time because of our other business.
An entity?
An S Corp.
Okay.
It's very, very, very easy. You just have to make sure to think of yourself as an employee.
Yeah.
So if you wanna go to Target and buy something, you have to pay yourself from the business, keep every single thing in that business. And also remember, your taxes are not due April 15th. They're due March 15th.
Business taxes are due 1
Business
month early.
corporate taxes are 1 month early. So it's pretty smooth once you get the hang of it.
Yeah, and I know that those professionals, accountants and stuff, I know they can be kind of pricey. Like a lot of people don't hire them because they don't want to spend the money. I'm telling you, the first year I hired a guy, and you look back at my last year, he's like, hey, your last guy cost you 10 grand and stuff that you could have got a return on. I was like,
There's a break in Social Security tax.
right? So
You don't have to pay as much
Right.
if you have a corporation or not.
since we've hired the company, I guarantee you save me thousands. No, by the way, the expense that your company pays them to do taxes is what? It's deductible as it's a business expense, right? So it's a no-brainer. So talk to somebody about it, have them take a look at your finances, get some suggestions and help with it. I mean, they do so much for me that I don't even have to know or think about. Like when they process payroll for us quarterly, they process payroll for us. They're already, like, that's our quarterly payment. Our quarterly payment is when we process the payroll for ourselves. Like I only understand about half of it, right? But I know I'm in good hands. I just trust them to take care of it. And when we sync up at the end of every year and look at the financial situation, I mean, these guys are calling me throughout the year saying, what are you projecting is going to be income and stuff for the year? I've never had anybody do that. Like, why do I need to project this for? Like, dude, we're trying to get ahead of the curve on your taxes so you're going to be in a good position. So give some consideration to that. If you have questions about it, let me know. I'm happy to point you in the direction of people. Talk to other agents in the office, find out what they do. Yes, ma'am.
Well, just along that line, would you suggest finding an accountant who specializes in
Real estate? Absolutely. When I walked into his room, I saw Keller Williams books. I was like, this is my guy. This is my
So
dude.
that's a question to ask.
Right. And I also wanted to know, I said, do you help people with real estate investing? Right? Because I want to know that they know that as well. Because guess what? If we're a real estate professional, how many of you own investment properties? Outstanding, right? If we're in the profession and we've got somebody helping us with our taxes in terms of our real estate business, it would probably make sense they could maybe also help us in terms of our real estate investing as well. Because I don't know how you guys are structured, but it's probably going to be another entity as well, right? All of a sudden it gets pretty confusing. You've got multiple LLCs for cash flow and stuff. We're doing expenses, and it can get a little nuts. So having that professional and their team there to help you out is absolutely perfect.
It might be a good conversation to start on our Facebook page of
Sure.
one is accountants you recommend
Absolutely.
in town here.
You want to post that one?
I would be happy to do that.
What do you use?
Who do I use? Well, he's a real estate guy. So it was Arnie Nelson. It was Arnie.
One guy in Rochester named Arnie, again.
One guy named Arnie.
That's it.
But we haven't divided up my business with, I mean, we're all lumped together.
And this is what I'll say is, what I find is there's a lot of people that are in that situation where, like, they know or they've thought about or they would like to make a change to it, but it's just so overwhelming or they don't even know where to begin. They're just like, hey, it works, let's just keep doing it that way. So until you can maybe sit down with somebody and say, hey, it's just like when you're doing a listing or a buyer consultation. Hey, this is what I'd like to do. I'm coming to you as a professional to give me some recommendations and educate me about my options, right? When I met with my tax guy, because I met with 2 different tax people. One guy didn't want to tell me anything until I hired him and started paying him. The other guy didn't expect any payment. He went to a whiteboard and he started doing this kind of stuff. Hey, this, about this, we can do this. These are some options. And I was like, this is my guy because he's educating me. The same exact thing I look for when I'm working with my clients. I start educating them.
The other thing I was going to say, and I don't know if you guys have already addressed this, but the 401s and your IRAs, I don't know how many of you guys have started those, but that is a huge deal. Huge. If you could just take a little bit of your money, set it aside, the 401k. At the end of the year, if you're projecting, a lot more coming in, you can roll that thing up. And I think, I don't know.
Maximum contribution
I
for
forget what it is.
a married couple, $36,000.
I know.
If I make a $36,000 contribution, it reduces what I have to pay in taxes by $13,000. And oh, by the way, there are some 401ks or SEPs and stuff that exist that you can put funds into and then invest those in real estate. So
Big deal.
there's so much knowledge out there in the minds of those professionals that tapping into is huge. And oh, by the way, the more you learn, the more dangerous it makes you as a realtor.
Well,
Because
it's just
because you can talk to
smart, you
investors
know?
about that.
You're not losing anything, you're only paying yourself.
Right.
And really, that's.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now that Nellie's here, we're actually done with our team meeting. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming. And don't forget, there's food out there for you.
Thank you.